liquor stores in that area. And of course, as we look at the criteria, we look at proximity, we look at concentration, and essentially a proliferation of this kind of business within the area. In looking at why an applicant or a person who wants to own or open a liquor store must request a special exception, the city has essentially said that there are impacts, there are consequences of having something like a retail liquor store in a community. And of course, as we look at the criteria that the city has set out, we would urge this board to evaluate and to weigh our statements on each of the 6, or I believe there are actually 7 criteria. First, this location is on a very heavily traveled thoroughfare. Additional traffic is certainly an impact on this community. As Ms. Hart has indicated, this is a small parking lot, and this parking lot is actually accessible immediately after exiting West Beltline Boulevard. West Beltline Boulevard is a very heavily trafficked area. Number 2, the proposed special exception, we would say, will have a substantial adverse impact on adjoining properties. No, the church is not in that same strip mall, but it is within 300, 400 feet. As Ms. Hart has indicated, St. John Baptist Church is a large church with all kinds of activities. We boast a congregation of well over 600 people. There are programs at St. John Baptist Church constantly, as well as a number of children there on a daily basis in its preschool program. We have had problems even now without this liquor store with public drunkenness, with people coming in and out, asking our congregants and asking people in the parking lot for money. We just feel that the addition of this retail liquor store there will just exacerbate those problems. Finally, I'd just like to point out in response to the last 4 or 5 criteria, these exceptions are there for a reason, and we would urge this board to consider the fact that the city has contemplated the fact that retail liquor stores often have an adverse effect on communities. St. John has tried to do a number of things in building up this community. We believe that there are plans to improve this area. Another retail liquor store is not going to be in furtherance of those plans to make this a better community. There's no question. There are currently businesses, there are currently activities there that are not good for a community. Adding another retail liquor store will not further the city's goal and certainly the community's goal to make this a better functioning area of our city. We would respectfully request that this board deny this application.
Mr. Kempson, I have a
Yes.
quick question for you. Ms. Hart's mentioned that there were approximately 4 to 6 in that area. Is that, would you confirm that approximation? Or you tell us how many are in, I guess, in the immediate area?
Mr. Cromartie, as many of you may know, I actually am general counsel at the Department of Revenue, who issues alcohol and beer licenses and retail liquor licenses. I do know that within a mile of this location, there are at least 2 other retail liquor stores. There's one on Fair Road within 100 feet, or I wouldn't say 100 feet, certainly longer than that. But when you open that radius out to another 2 miles, you have at least, I would say, 5. Now, I can get you that actual data, so what I'm saying now is only an estimation. But there are a number of retail liquor locations. The area is adequately served for this kind of product.
Thank you.
Yes,
I do have a question.
Yes,
Maybe
sir.
it's to the staff. It's my understanding that there is another liquor store at 3509 Farrell Road already. Is that correct?
That,
We can't take testimony from the floor, but so if someone could come up and say yes on the microphone, that'd be fine.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
All right.
Thank you
And
very much.
I also wanted to tell you that I have petitions from the neighbors that couldn't be here today, the neighbors and the church members.
Would you please give that to Mr. Livingood, gentleman to your left? All right. I have been informed that the applicant is now present, and so since the normal course is for the applicant to come forward, I'm going to give the applicant a chance to come forward to present their application, and then if there are others here in favor or opposition, we will resume that part after the applicant submits his application. For the record, Mr. Livingood has presented me with a beer, wine, and liquor store protest sheet with 34 signatures and another protest sheet with 6 signatures. Mr. Ahmed Gohel, would you come forward, please?
Yes. My nephew gonna explain everything.
Okay.
Yeah. He should be here.
Please come forward. Please come forward. I know, I'm gonna swear him in, thank you. Would you please raise your right hands, each of you? Do you affirm or attest that the testimony you give today is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Please proceed with your application.
Okay. We operate a store down. Sorry. We own and operate a store down the block. It's like a couple miles away. It's on Farrow Road, and the address is 5897 Farrow Road. Now, our patrons, they buy general goods like chips and whatnot. And most of our patrons suggested that we open something which they were interested in, which is a liquor store. Now, we had proposed to open a liquor store that was in the adjacent building, but it was too close to the elementary school that was nearby. So we searched for another area where which is not too far from our current store, where our patrons can go to buy liquor. And that's why when we found this area, we suggested that we turn this into a liquor store.
Is this going to be in addition to the current store or in place of it?
Oh, it's just, it's going to be a separate establishment.
In addition?
Yeah, in addition.
Thank you.
The application for special exception requires that you address certain criteria. Could you address each of the criteria for special exception, please? Specifically, criteria 1 through 8.
Don't have the thing with the papers with me. It's, sorry. Yeah, we on the form we had filled out and taken a look at all the stuff, and we believe that it's meet all the criteria.
Okay. What will be the impact upon vehicular and pedestrian safety?
There's enough parking that we figure that it won't be enough to cause like trouble. It is we don't expect more than a couple people per hour to come into the store, and as such that it shouldn't be too much of a burden on the parking lot that's already established there. Also, on the if you're looking at the door of the store on the left-hand side, there's space for loading vehicles and such where it won't impede any traffic on the main road, which is Beltline. So you won't be worrying about trucks stopping in the middle in case we're loading and unloading.
And is proposed, what will be the impact upon environmental factors such as noise, lights, glare, vibration, fumes, et cetera?
Since we're only selling liquor for off-site consumption, there will be no light unless there's sufficient lighting for, in case there's not sufficient light outside for the safety of people. Otherwise, there will be no extra noises generated from the workspace inside.
And is there going to be any impact upon the aesthetic character of the area, or any impact upon the adjacent buildings?
No, we will uphold the state of the area that we're releasing right now, and as such, it won't be able to impact the adjacent areas.
Speak to the issue of public safety and whether or not your store will create a nuisance are detrimental to the public interest or conditions likely to increase a law enforcement response.
No, we only sell liquor for off-site consumption. As such, I don't believe that it's going to be a concern for people in the immediate vicinity.
Criteria number 5 is that of concentration. Can you elaborate upon whether or not the establishment of the proposed special exception creates a concentration or proliferation of the same or similar type of use, which concentration may be detrimental to the development or redevelopment of the area in which the special exception is being proposed?
I believe that this won't be any effect. I mean, I doubt, no.
Okay. Is the proposed special exception consistent with the character and intent of the underlying district as indicated in the zoning district description?
Yes. It's consistent with the zoning district character.
And then the last 2 criteria are compatibility and public interest. Can you speak to those 2?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this is a suggestion from our patrons. As such, we took it upon as a business venture to help those patrons get what they wanted. So as such, I believe that it's in the public interest because we have quite a few, many patrons in the area.
And those patrons, do they walk or do they drive?
Both. There's some in the immediate area, and then a lot of people drive too also.
Okay.
What will be your hours of operation and days of the week?
I would believe it'd be 10 o'clock in the morning to 7.
The state dictates that,
or
I
6.
believe, right?
Yeah, the state dictates that.
Yes, exactly.
So your plan is to be as open as long as you're allowed to under the state regulations?
It depends. We also have to determine our staffing and such. And we also have to look into, initially when we open the business, we'll have to look into when we have lots of customers and when we don't. And as such, if the morning is not, let's say, profitable to stay open, then we open later or close earlier and whatnot.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for this applicant? Is there anyone else here to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Please come forward. I'm going to have to ask you to swear in as well. I don't think you were present at that time. Would you raise your right hand, please, sir? Do you affirm or attest that the testimony you give today is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Donald Gist. I am the attorney for St. John Baptist Church, and I wanted to basically appear, even though Attorney Kempson has already spoken on behalf of the church as well as one of our church members and neighborhood leaders. As you can see, there's a number of neighborhood people who are here in opposition to this proposed special exception. I want to go back and look at the actual criteria with respect to the applicant, and I want to also reference one thing that the applicant just said a few minutes ago, and that is the fact that they decided to move to try to get a special exception for this location as opposed to another previous location that they had actually planned on opening up a liquor store. They said that the reasons that they moved their plans to try to locate at this location was because there was a school. Well, at St. John Baptist Church, we operate a school also. If you will look on the screen at the blue tent that's there, that's a part of the playground for the St. John Baptist Church. Our preschool is a separate entity from our church, and it exists as a separate entity. At our preschool, we house infants from 0 to 5 years of age. Visibly, those children would be adversely impacted because, as the applicant has indicated, he's selling the liquor obviously for off-site consumption. They have no control once the persons who purchase that liquor, whether they are in vehicles and most particularly if they are on foot, they have no control over where those persons go. Now, we're not in the business of trying to deprive anybody from doing business, but as this has been previously stated, there's 2 or 3 liquor stores also within very close proximity to the proposed special exception location. In addition, we do believe that it will create a adverse public impact on our community. The community around and surrounding the church is homes. You're looking at possible litter. You're looking at, in addition that Mr. Kempson said, the traffic flow for people going in and out. We do not believe that the park in itself, because this building is not a separate building. There are other businesses in this building. One of those businesses is a family-oriented bridal shop and an adult consignment shop. I don't believe that the applicant has any way of controlling persons who, once they buy that liquor from their shop and they walk away from that shop, as to whether or not they're going to represent a public nuisance to the people who are trying to also go into that family-oriented business. I think they fail with respect to special exceptions 2, with respect to the adverse impact on the adjoining properties. I think they also fail with the adverse impact on the aesthetic character of the area. We're working very closely to try to develop that area, and the church has bought a tremendous amount of property for future expansion around that area. We believe that it will adversely impact our ability to get loans at the church, to really go forward and develop that property. We believe also that it will adversely impact the homeowners in that with respect to their real estate value. At exception number 5, with respect to the redevelopment, we also think that this liquor store would provide no incentive for people to come into this area to try to redevelop. In addition to being a member of St. John Baptist Church and one of the lawyers there at St. John Baptist Church and a deacon, I'm also the chairman of the North Columbia Business Association, and we cover North Main, we cover Farrell Road, we cover all the way out to St. Andrews, and we operate about 60 businesses in that area. It's our interest to try to develop businesses, but it's not our interest to have business, a proliferation of liquor stores up and down North Main Street, up and down Farrell Road. I would move that they have failed to meet special exceptions 2, 3, 4, 5, and also 8. There is no positive impact on the public interest for this proposed site. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor or in opposition? Please come forward, sir. Good morning.
I'm Reverend Willie Simons from Belvedere Community, right up the street from where this proposed liquor store is going to be allowed to open, or we're not going to allow it to be open. I'm here representing our communities, Belvedere, around St. John and all. And we've had an influx of businessmen coming in our communities and wanting to open liquor stores and et cetera. We are totally against any more liquor stores, any more stores that decrease the value of our communities. We are totally against it. We've been doing some surveys, and it seems like every little hole open in our community, some businessmen want to come in and open a liquor store, or something that will benefit them and not our community. And I'm just here this morning to voice my concerns that we have enough liquor stores in our communities. And we would hope that you would consider, we don't need another one in our community. It's just as though they want to come in and make money, but they don't put any money back in the community. And I just feel like we can do better. Our community can do better than just having liquor stores, places that sell beer and wine, cigarettes that only hurts our community instead of making our community a great community as we trying to work toward that it be, sir. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in favor or opposition to this application?
Mary Harts,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add that they are not considering the foot traffic. When they come in to buy the liquor, they talked about they had room for the cars to park. But most of the people that we are objecting to, they don't drive the cars. They walk. And they throw those bottles after they finish with it down in our area. Every morning we have to come out and pick up bottles. And then by the church and the school, they come up there and we have a fence around the school. They come talk to the children. We have to always be saying, move, move, move. I call the police for them. So the foot traffic is what we are concerned about more so than the traffic from the cars.
Thank you, ma'am. If there's no one else to speak in favor or in opposition to this application, I will close testimony and move into board discussion.
I don't have a clear understanding of how many liquor stores are close to this one. Did any of y'all pick that up?
Well, we can't take
No.
we can't take testimony right now, so we're gonna have board discussion. I've driven that area, and so by my count, I know there are 1, 2, 3. I know there are at least 3, actually 4. If you go down further, I know there are at least 4 within about a 3 to 4 block radius.
Radius of that, okay.
Based upon my driving.
Okay.
And I know the store behind it sells beer and wine. I think that's a convenience store, and I think there's another beer and wine store up the street too. So
And what was our determination that would be considered concentration of something, or is that?
well, that is a case-by-case situation. I know when we started using the concentration requirement that the city council provided us, there's never a clear number, and I think, concentration and density is something that we look at on a case-by-case basis, whether it's 3 versus 5 or whether it's 12 versus 21. I think we have to look at the community and then look at the number and look at the proximity and come to our own conclusion.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Two. One, the record indicates that there is at least another one. It appears to be a block, maybe differently measured because of the layout of the streets there at 3407, I believe.
Yeah, 3509.
Yes, so this is 3407. Secondly, in response to the concentration, it's partly a matter of, as I understand the text of the ordinance, is that it's partly whether it's also going to be detrimental. I mean, and I think that's particularly a problem here. You have these fragile neighborhoods like this, which can go one way or the other, and we have the problem of death by 1,000 cuts occurring, where you just keep, when there's a chance to stop something like this that is showing a particular direction and concentration, because it does have an impact here. There are perhaps some neighborhoods that would not have it. I'm particularly impressed by the testimony about the pedestrian traffic coming to the liquor store. As we've learned in dealing with other neighborhoods, that has a real impact on how the liquor store affects the neighborhood, to have people coming by foot, carrying it out. and then they can go in different directions. They could go home, they may not go home. One's not sure where they will go. So it's a troublesome kind of liquor store as well. And so I think it really has a tremendous problem with the concentration as well as compatibility and public interest.
But I think what we ought to be careful about, and I hadn't made up my mind, but the market dictates what survives and what doesn't. I mean, based on some of this logic, you could say that we shouldn't have any more bars or restaurants that sell alcohol on Main Street because we've got 800 students sitting in the hub. And I would bet you that the majority of them are underage. And I know that that may be, to some people, you know, an extreme example, but this is always a tough one. I'm really not for it, but I just always struggle with, you know, we've had somebody from DOR speak, and I hadn't, like Patty, gotten any more clarity about, I mean, define concentration. So that's just always my struggle. I mean, I live over on the southeast side of town, and, you know, I don't know how you define concentration. I mean, on Forest Drive around Trenum Plaza, there are a handful of liquor stores. And you've got a pretty diverse neighborhood going down Percival Road as opposed to the other way down Trenum Road. So I'm just always conflicted, and I think it's just, you know, it's the ambiguity, and it's what we do. I mean, we have to make decisions, you know, the best that we can. But I don't know, just wish we had some more definition about a concentration. And then again, I think, you know, why it's just not that easy to legislate morality. You know, I mean, the liquor store fails if the community doesn't support it, and they'll go out of business pretty quickly. And I don't know. But I applaud you. You've got areas, that stretch, I ride that stretch at least twice a week. You know, coming from Farrow Road up West Beltline, back up towards Richland Mall, and it's blighted. I mean, it really is, and I don't mean that with any disrespect, but the car dealers have left, the grocery stores have pretty much pulled out. That was Joe Edens' first development in Columbia, I think. And so I mean, I'm addressing y'all. I mean, I don't mean any disrespect. I guess you can just see how I vote, but I applaud y'all for what you do, but, you know, get the church to educate people so they don't, you know, if it's not something that y'all want to support in the neighborhood, then people shouldn't support it. It's like voting with your wallet. But anyway, I just wish we had some more clarity about the concentration, because I think we could go back and forth all day long about, you know, all the criteria with the ambiguity there is in it. But
Well, I would say several things. I understand your market concept, that if people don't support it, it fails. But then I also heard your other comment where you mentioned that the fact that it was blighted, and I think your commentary to that effect, I think, speaks directly to why this is not compatible with the community and why it's not consistent with the public interest. And when you look at concentration, it speaks to detrimental to development or redevelopment of the area. And
But what's frustrating, Ernest, is that, you know, I don't know what the site was coming in at the old Midland Shopping Center. I think it was probably like one of the mini Walmart that everybody
I'd say it's a grocery store or
shouted,
something,
you know, that
yeah.
everybody shouted down. Then give these people that are going to invest their money in it a chance to do. I mean, if we're going to shout down liquor stores, I mean, I understand that, but we get a lot of people who shout down grocery stores, and I don't understand. I mean, if you don't like the status quo, then, but if somebody, I mean, look at it this way, and again, I'm going to be quiet and vote, but, I mean, the way I look at it is somebody's coming to spend money to hopefully improve your community. But I get the problems of, you know, there's a big difference between Forest Drive and between, you know, Trader Joe's and Walmart than there is between, you know, West Beltline and between Farrah and Forest.
Well, there is, and then I think also piggybacking off of Mr. Hubbard's comment and testimony given by Ms. Hartz, we have to look at concentration for the area in which we are assessing. And I think when you look at Forest Drive and you look at the 3 or 4 that may be in that area, you don't have a lot of foot traffic. Now, you do have some folks who are maybe running and jogging, but in terms of foot traffic, walking with bags, you don't have that. In this community, you're going to have individuals walking back and forth. You're going to have students across the street. The majority of the traffic in other areas is usually vehicular, whereas this is going to be pedestrian. And as Mr. Hubbard said, I think the idea of bottles and interaction with other individuals, the people who may be coming or going from that store, are probably not going to be best for the community. And we have the ambiguity so we can make the tough decisions between another store of this nature in Forest, on Trenum or on Forest versus here on Marshall and Beltline, where the demographics and the use and the patrons are different, and so therefore the impact upon the community is different, and the surrounding community itself is different. So I think looking at this, we do have an issue with concentration. I think we do have an issue with public interest. We do have an issue with compatibility and character. So I would be opposed to having another liquor store at this location.
I just want to make a comment about the idea the market will take care of it. The market will take care of it by allowing people to make a profit, as you pointed out, and that's what the market people do, but they don't bear any of the costs that the neighborhood bears, so they're getting, in effect, a free lunch in terms of their impacts on the neighborhood, and that's precisely why we have zoning, so we can have those things worked out.
Well, and again, I hear you, but, you know, nobody's come up and have said what the bridal shop puts back into the community. And I'm not saying that the bridal shop is the same as a liquor store, but I just feel like we get these hot-button issues, and it's just real easy to shout them down based on the number of people that come. I mean, nobody's come and said, we don't want a liquor store because they don't give back to the community like X, Y, and Z and then illustrate how they do. It's just, we don't want a liquor store. But I get it.
I'd just like to point out that nobody has shouted today. Thank you.
I have,
Well, again, I apologize for the choice of words. I guess opposition to, I chose poorly. Nobody has shouted, but it's just the, again, forgive me for not being the wordsmith that you are.
One thing that I can say, I think it was like about 2 weeks ago, a gentleman was panhandling, and I think he was a little intoxicated. So I know exactly what you all mean. I mean, the concentration, and I think this would be very detrimental to the community.
do we have any business owners here that are near this proposed liquor store? See, what, the reason, I should address this to the board. I'm just always curious when it's going in next to businesses and none of the business owners are here.
I don't think there are any adjacent business owners present except for the church, which is by the steeple, I think right across the street. But to my knowledge, we don't have any other brick and mortar business owners in the adjacent area. We've closed testimony. Well, I'm not. Well, I'm gonna just give me a brief moment. So, I've closed testimony. We have the possibility of someone from the public that wants to provide some more insight to answer your question. So at this time, I'm going to reopen testimony for the limited purpose of answering that question. Please come forward.
I'm Alice J. Holt at 2220 Adams Street.
Okay.
I am a business owner. I secure a business license from the City of Columbia. I do own houses in that area. And the kind of traffic that is created because of all of these liquor stores, I feel is not in the best interest of the community in which I operate.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to reclose testimony now. Any more board discussion, or do we have a motion regarding this application?
I move to deny the request for special exception.
I'll second that motion. We have a motion by Mr. Hubbard, seconded by Mr. Cromartie. All in favor of denying this request for a special exception, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
3, 4, 2 against. Can I have a show of hands just to confirm, please? 4?
For denying it?
For denying, correct. It's Mr. Cromartie, Mr. Hubbard, and Mr. McKnight, and against would be Mr. McMeekin and Ms. Durkin. So the motion to deny passes.
Okay, so this application has been denied. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next case is 15-008 variance at 228 Marion Street, tax map 09016, 04, and 13. So variance to the lot coverage requirements for an addition to a single-family home. The applicant is requesting to vary the lot coverage to allow approximately 32.8% lot coverage, where 30% would be allowed in the RS3 zoning district. The addition is approximately 156 square feet. The application states the reason for the addition is to add an accessible bathroom to the house for a resident with mobility issues. The applicant is here. Answer any questions.
Please come forward, sir.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Williams. I live at 2208 Marion Street. Thank you for hearing my application for variance for lot coverage to add an accessible bathroom to the house. In short, the application is detailed to respond to the criteria, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. I've secured an architect who's familiar with historic design, as our house is in a historic district, and the design is present in the application and is consistent with the rest of the structure. It meets the setback guidelines to adjacent properties, and it is also consistent with the city's design, I don't know the right word, philosophy of being consistent yet distinct so that it can be identified as an addition for future residents. And as I said before in the application, it's to add an accessible bathroom. That house currently has 1.25 bathrooms. One is a 6x8 with a walk-in shower tub on one side, toilet and sink down the other. It's a pretty narrow access for someone with mobility issues. This would allow us to continue care provision in the home with a much better ease than we currently have.
Staff has asked us to.
Pardon me?
Staff has asked us to ask you.
Okay.
If we were to grant this application, whether or not you would comply with the design requirements of the Cottontown Bellevue Overlay District, including obtaining a certificate of design approval if required. Are you willing to comply with that criteria?
Yes, sir. I've already been in touch with the Office of Design and Approval, and as you see by the architect and the design of the structure, it's designed that way specifically to be that. That is my goal. I'm about 14-year resident of the neighborhood,
Okay.
and I was part of the support to achieve that designation. So yes, I will. I thought it was just expected and required, but yes, I will comply with those expectations.
Do you have any idea how old your house is?
It was built in 1929.
29. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Staff, it is my understanding that the applicant is relying upon the information he submitted in our packet. I think I heard him mention that, or mention that he submitted the, answer to the criteria. Do you need for us to go through the criteria, or can we rely upon the information that he has submitted? Since I think he alluded to that in his opening testimony.
Right. I think it'd be okay if he did want to rely on that information based on the documents submitted in the application to address those specific criteria would be fine.
Now, I do have a question. Can you tell me about the current non-conforming status of this property? It's already over the 30%, correct?
Yeah, it's slightly over 30%. I want to say it's about 31%, which is somewhat typical for older homes in established neighborhoods in town.
So are we considering it to be an additional 2.8%, or are we considering it to be an additional 1.8%?
Well, the variance would allow for the proposal, and so make it comply with any approved variance.
I got you.
So, I think that the difference
we're
is approximately 1.5%.
So we're capturing the nonconformity in the variance?
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
I understand.
One reason I wonder how old it was, obviously, the nonconformity problem is it was built before we had zoning. It's not as if we have someone who has not followed the rules.
Right.
Yeah, correct,
Yeah.
yes.
I just want to make that clear in the record. So it's possible to pick up on that for him in his sworn testimony today to say that everything in his application is indeed what he would testify to?
Yes, correct.
I do testify that everything
Thank you.
contained within the application
Thank you.
is correct.
Yeah, well, if there's no more testimony from the applicant, is there anyone here to speak in favor or opposition to this application? If not, I will close testimony and move into board discussion and/or receive a motion.
I move to approve the request for a variance. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions here that do not generally apply to other property. They will not prohibit or unreasonably restrict the use and will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good. And the character of the district will not be harmed. This is evidenced by support from the neighborhood association and by the adjacent neighbors on either side of the house. I think it's also important to note the way it fits within a sort of L-shaped space in the house, so to some extent it doesn't really extend the feel of the footprint of the place, which is an unusual situation.
The motion by Mr. Hubbard, is there a second?
A second.
We have a second from Mr. McKnight. All in favor of approving the variance, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Your request for a variance has been granted.
Next case is 15-01 variance at 2203 Gadsden Street, tax map 09011-02-16. It's a variance to the lot coverage requirements for an addition to a single-family home. The property is zoned RS3 and is within a design preservation overlay. Again, in the RS3 zoning district, a maximum of 30% lot coverage is allowed. The applicant is requesting to cover approximately plus or minus 36.7% of the lot for a approximately 6 feet by 16 square foot addition. The application states that the reason for the addition is to correct a drainage problem with an existing concrete slab which slopes towards the house. The applicant is here for any questions.
Would you please come forward?
Good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
Brenda Ferguson, and I'm the owner of this house, and I have my contractor and builder, John Wolf, here with me to explain anything about the design, because I'm a nurse and homeowner. But I bought this house around 2007, and the house was originally built in 2010. And as far as the design, I had a little bit of a roof a water problem when we bought it. and we did put a roof on. We thought that would correct it. That did not correct it, and around 2010, we had the aluminum siding pulled off. We put new insulation in that had been water damaged, put wrap around it, and put hardy plank siding on it. And so that, I thought that might correct my problem. We also just kind of built a deck and with pergola over it, not a roof. About 2 years ago, we had a really rainy winter, and that's in an area I don't use, I couldn't use a lot because it is a very small room. But when I went in one day to clean, where I had Christmas people coming, I had black mold on my wall, and the molding had pulled away from the siding. So in cleaning that, I knew I had to do something to correct this problem with the mold as well as the continuing water damage regardless of what I had done. Now, I don't know if you have a picture of the sloping roof, but I know it's in the original plan. I can't really, the house has been built, was built in 2010, and I really think that this place was possibly, because of the way the roof was sloped, a breezeway. It wasn't enclosed, and somewhere since 1910 it was enclosed. And it's just caused continued damage. I have rot of my foundation. I think if it doesn't get replaced, it will just creep up into the other parts. And so I'm asking for this variance. It will, currently my lot coverage is, I'm under impression, is about 34.5%. And this will increase it by a little over 2%. And with that percentage, it's not as much as my neighbors, but it's just to correct this water problem that just continues to be an issue.
So just so I'm clear, this is a question for staff. We have another non-conforming lot asking for a small percentage of increase, is that correct?
That's correct.
And this variance approves not only the additional 2% or 1.7%, but also the underlying nonconformity, is that correct?
Correct.
This is for the builder. Sir, can you come forward and explain, I'm curious about the slope of the concrete and the drainage issue. Can you give some more insight into that?
Yes, my name is John Wolf. On the outside of this room, there's a concrete patio there, and it did slope somewhat back to the house, and I think the reason for that when they built this years ago was to keep it from throwing all the water on the next door neighbor. The sill has rotted completely out, and we got to replace the sill as well as tear out that wall that's there and see what kind of mold damage is inside of it. But if we added a roof on it, a sloped roof, then what her plans were to eliminate all the water. It would keep the water from coming down on top of her patio and splashing back against the sill of her home and causing some roof damage. We had to replace the ceiling inside that existing room because of the mold and the damage that was there. But she plans on, if we can put a roof over it and close it, we're going to put diversions out there to divert the water to the right and left side, and she's going to put rain barrels there to catch the water, and she and her next door neighbor are going to use that to water their plants and things like that.
That was my next question. If there's a natural slope and the concrete was tilted back to not negatively impact the neighbor, then what were you going to do to redivert but not negatively impact the neighbor? So
yeah, we were going to put the roof on there and divert the water. Instead of coming off toward the neighbor, we're going to revert it into rain barrels on the right and left side.
Okay.
And it would eliminate that. If she doesn't put a roof on it, someone at one point mentioned gutters. I don't know that they will approve gutters in the historical area. I'm not sure, but even if they did, the water coming, the rain, regular rain, is splashing back against the house and causing massive damage, actually.
As in the previous applicant, this is a quite similar application. I'll ask the same question. If the board is inclined to approve this request, would the applicant be open to complying with acquiring a certificate of design of approval, since this is in the Elmwood Park Overlay District?
Yes, you would.
Yes.
Okay. Are you saying you have one?
Yes, mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
And they approved the use?
Yes, sir.
Divert and rain barrels?
They approved everything that we applied for.
Okay, all right.
The design of it, and keeping with the, integrity of the historical area, we're going to use it. It's only coming out 6 feet, and we can use the same siding that's on the house and the same type of windows in that, so that it meets those historical requirements.
Are there any more questions for this applicant? Is it your testimony that the information you provided in your application can be taken as your testimony today, ma'am?
Yes. Yeah, I do have support from I talked with my neighbors, and I have support letters from the neighbors on either side and across the street, as well as the president of our association is a neighbor on the same block, and he came up and took a look. I don't have his written, but I do have a text message from him that he sees no problem with it.
If you would, please provide that information to Mr. Livingood so that we can include that as a part of the package today.
Okay.
If I could say one other thing, you did mention, ask about the rain barrels. When we submitted this for their approval, they came out and met with us. We told them what we were planning on doing, but I don't think in our original proposal that we specifically mentioned rain barrels, but that's what we intend to do.
I don't know if he would like to have this. This actually does show how much this would show from the street, but it would not be as far as this pergola sticking out.
If you would, provide that to Mr. Livingood.
It's very small amount. Because actually, the house currently, there's like 18 inches that it goes in that.
It's an offset.
It's an offset.
The size of the room would be approximately 96 square feet. It's only 6 feet by 16.
Are there any more questions for this applicant from the board? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition or in favor of this application? Is there any more testimony that you two would like to provide?
No, I feel like, I would just like to say that I feel like if I don't do this, that it's just, the rot will just creep and invite termites, and I have I've taken all the precautions, but I don't really know what else to do except to take these steps.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close testimony, go into board discussion, or take a motion.
I move to grant the request for variance.
We have a motion by Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second? Second. With a second from Mr. McMeekin. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Your request for a variance has been granted. Thank you.
Next case is number 15011, variance at 4400 Fair Street, tax map number 092110513. The applicant is requesting a variance to the height requirements for a fence within a required front yard. A 4-foot high fence would normally be required. The applicant is requesting permission to have a 6-foot high cyclone fence installed. While the property is zoned RS3, which is single-family residential, it is owned by Eau Claire Cooperative Health Center, and it's in the vicinity of their existing center. The applicant states that the variance in the fence height would help prevent dumping of debris on the site and help to prevent future property maintenance code violations on the site as well. And Mr. Scott, the applicant, is here for any questions.
Is the applicant present?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman,
Good
members of the board. I'm Ron Scott with Eau Claire Cooperative Health Centers. We're here today with a variance request, as has been stated, regarding fence height. We operate, and you can see from the photography there, the aerial shots, we have 3 separate facilities. There actually is a new facility, which is not depicted on the photography, but we house approximately 4 medical practices and a pharmacy at this site where we serve patients throughout the Eau Claire and Greater Columbia area. We purchased the lot at 4400 Fair Street as a potential expansion site to allow us to care for future medical needs in the area. Since purchasing that site, it has been the subject of illegal dumping and what we believe to be sometimes illicit activity on the site. I have been to the site myself on some occasions, and I've observed individuals in activities that I would probably not wish to share before this board. What we are seeking is an opportunity to prevent access as much as we can to the property until it is developed. We have had representatives from the City of Columbia write us letters threatening citations because of illegal dumping or debris in the yard, which has not been placed there by us, but by individuals who, because of the location of this lot and its relative obscurity, uses as a dumping site. And 4 feet in height is just not what we deem a sufficient height to prevent most individuals from just picking up a bag of debris and throwing it over. So our request is to the board respectfully to allow us to place a fence at the front of the property, and really that's the only issue in question here, the very front portion, 2 feet higher than what is presently allowed. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board members may have.
So there's currently a 4-foot fence around all 4 corners of the property?
No, sir, there's not. There at the back of the property, and when I say the back of the property, if we could perhaps go to the facing the property, as you can see, there is a wooden privacy fence at the back that abuts our behavioral health facility, and that is higher than 4 feet at this point. There is a cyclone fence on the left and the right, and I believe those fences are part of the adjoining neighbor's property.
So you just need 6 feet across the front?
Yes, sir. We would install our own fence, which will adjoin and attach to our wooden privacy fence in the back as well. Yes, sir.
Now, are you asking for this fence until you develop the property, or are you
Yes, sir.
asking for the fence just even past development?
Once we develop the property, we feel there would be less of a need, if any need at all, for such a fence, as we would have staff on site providing some level of medical service, and it would be much less likely that the illegal dumping and the illicit activity would take place with staff members present.
I have a question. Well, I have 2 questions. One, would you be willing to make part of your testimony that the fence will come down upon development of the property?
Yes, sir. Okay. We would have no problem with doing that.
And is that an issue for staff if we were to grant it, if they decided to say this is limited to our development of the property?
And we are, just for clarity, are you speaking of the portion of the fence in the front that would be 6 feet
Just
tall?
the portion of the fence that we
Yes,
might
sir.
approve today? Okay. Would that be an issue with staff?
It would not be an issue if we were to look at street view and go back to, the left a little bit, and I don't think we have a picture of it, but they've with their new development along that same area, they put up a nice wrought iron type fence that, looks good. So, we wouldn't have a problem with till it's developed having that.
Now, and this is a question for staff, are you suggesting that it be a wrought iron fence versus a cyclone fence, or?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying when they developed the site, one lot down, they did a nice job with the fence that they
I got you.
installed.
I understand.
And just to add for aesthetics in the community, we have, at the site that's being mentioned by the zoning administrator, we have established not just the wrought iron fence, but we built a very nice decorative brick fence that costs well into the thousands of dollars, but we did so we would improve the aesthetic value of the community, realizing that screening is necessary. Where you see the house on the right, the grayish-looking house, that is no longer there. Our new pediatric behavioral health facility now sits at that location.
Okay.
Picking up on the chair's question about the development, I note that the application indicates that the things that do not generally apply elsewhere are that the current lot, quote, sits vacant and unsecured. And so then the uniqueness will disappear when it's developed, in which case it would make sense that the fence would come down. And you have no problem with?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you.
Would you also agree that the documentation that you have submitted is one and the same as the testimony that you would give today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other questions for this applicant?
I have a question. So once you put that the fence that you're proposing, is it secured on all, would that lot be secured on all sides then?
Yes,
I was
yes,
just-
ma'am.
I
That would be
couldn't-
the intent, to secure it on all sides.
Okay.
The lot, the back of the lot joins into other property that we already own, and there is a fence
The wooden
there now.
fence, right.
This would adjoin into that existing fence.
Okay.
My understanding is you have a problem with a 6-foot fence in the side yard as you approach the street as well. Isn't that correct? Does he need another variance here?
Within the first 20 feet, the front 20 feet would need to be 4 feet, but once they got out of the front yard setback of 20 feet, it could go up and wouldn't be part of this request.
So what I'm wanting to know, is it going to be 4 feet or 6 feet in that 20 feet you referred to?
It would be allowed as 4 feet, but he's asking for 6 feet.
So it's not just across the front, it's the first 20 feet?
Correct, in the front yard setback.
Right.
Yes.
So it's a setback and the street. I just want to make sure what we're approving. Thank
Yes.
you.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions for this applicant? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition or in favor of this application?
Thank you for consideration.
If not, I'll close testimony and take a motion.
I move we approve the variance. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions applying to the property that do not generally apply to other property in the area that would prohibit or unreasonably restrict the use of the land. This would not be substantial detriment to the adjacent property, the public good, or to the character of the district. Clarifying precisely what would happen if development, that it would come down. It's the minimum necessary to achieve these goals, and it's in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance and not injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare.
There's a motion from Mr. Hubbard. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. McMeekin. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Any comments?
No, sir, that concludes the regular agenda and other business. If you'd like to address the election of board members?
Yes. Once again, we don't have a full body. I'm inclined to wait for a full body. I don't know when that will be, but does anyone have any suggestions on how we should address the elections? Whether we should wait for a full body or I think you're going to be absent next month.
Did you?
Okay. So I'm willing to take comments.
Okay. Did you get Preston's email?
Yes, I did receive the communication.
Okay.
From Preston. But well, since you won't be here next month, if everyone else is here, would you be comfortable if we took the vote, or do you want to wait until you come back and we're all here?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll make a motion to move that we have our elections next month when we have a full body with the knowledge that Ms. Durkin will be absent but has given her blessing for us to move forward, nominate her for all things in her absence. So we have a motion to postpone elections till next month. All in favor? Is there a second?
I second.
There was a second, Mr. Knight. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So moved. At this time, I will adjourn the 2/10/2015 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals.